from Los Angeles, California. This is Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Join the talk at nowdaily.com/show.
Welcome to Now Daily. I am Robert Crawford. I'm going to be your host tonight. We're going to be talking about what's happened this week. We've had a lot of news going on within the world, and we want to talk to it. But first, before we get started, my co-host tonight is Charles Contreras. Charles, say hi.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
What's going on? So we've had a lot of things to talk about. You know, I think everyone right now is really talking about obviously the terrorist attack that happened on Friday the 13th of all nights. Do you think there's a correlation with this Friday the 13th? You think maybe they staged it on that date?
No, I don't think ISIL or these terrorists thought that well into it. I think it just happened to do with the president being in town and the concerts and just, a lot of people being in the area at the same time. I mean, the whole idea was mass casualties, so they were probably just waiting for a night when everybody was in town. I don't think they were that smart to plan it on the 13th.
I don't know. I think we see a lot of things recurring on these odd dates. I mean, first, why do we even have this affiliation with Friday the 13th? Do you understand why we even have that?
It's from a movie, right? Like a horror movie. Oh, I don't know. Was it something before that?
Yeah, like recently, I think that's what everyone thinks it was. But like the original reason was Friday the 13th was the date. I can't remember the date. It was like in the 1200s or 1100s, where the Vatican, the church, basically tried to exterminate all the Knights Templars. And a lot of people say that the Knights Templars is what eventually turned into what is now known as the Illuminati or the Freemasonry.
Oh.
So, going back a little bit, a little weird. But, we have a video over here. Let's play this that's showing a little clip of actually what happened. Someone caught it on their phone, I guess. So let's watch this for a second.
Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
I mean, did you see that guy hanging out of the window?
Yeah, man. Was he just that's where he thought he was going to be safe?
Well, I mean, I would do this. I don't know. I mean, if you're in that situation, if there was a window and people were shooting, I would probably hang out of it if I had to for a little bit.
Yeah, I guess so. How long was he planning on staying out there?
I mean, that's a good question. Yeah. I mean, here's what let's look at this article on Breitbart. Actually, that's not the one. There's an article about this guy who ended up actually saving his girlfriend's life in that attack. They were at this concert hall, and he basically threw himself on top of her, and which is pretty great. I mean, I think that's what a normal person should do, right? Try to protect someone that you love. But here was the interesting thing that I saw in this article. In the very bottom, I noticed that it said how much time. It said that they had to lay there for over an hour and 15 minutes until the cops came in and rescued them.
Wow. It's like a long hostage situation, yeah.
Well, I don't even think it was a hostage situation. Because I don't think they were taking hostages. I just think they were shooting.
Yeah.
So it's just I feel like that's just a long response for the police.
Well, I mean, they didn't want to go in there storming at first. I mean, some of the footage I saw, it was just sort of they were staging outside, trying to figure out what was going on. They were hoping that if they went in, it wasn't going to be a mass murder, kind of like what ended up happening. But there were videos of the police, and as soon as they started going in, grenades were going off and gunshots and more, And it's really, really sad. Really, really sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are now just trying to. They're saying they're either in one of two camps, right? I think a lot of people are just saying pray for Paris, which is great. I mean, prayer definitely helps. It's been proven that if you can get thousands of people together to do a prayer and set their intention on one thing, it literally scientifically affects the environment. But I think then the other camp is just kind of using this as to fire the debate on immigration. You know, because everyone's blaming that this is only happening because they're allowing all these migrants in from Syria, and a lot of the refugees that are coming over are actually this quote unquote, ISIS group.
Well, The Guardian had some articles talking about how three of the suspects were actually Frenchmen, and they were already in France. They weren't immigrants. So it's these people were already there, and then France did this whole border shutdown. And I mean, it's already been a hot topic with all of these immigrants coming in through Turkey, Austria, to way of like trying to get to Germany, or even landing in Italy and trying to get up to Germany, or all these different routes they're taking. Uh, but it's already been a real hot topic issue lately, and this just definitely pushed it over the edge in the sense that France and the U.S. had they launched 10 airplanes and dropped 20 bombs on 5 different sites over the last 24 hours basically. So I mean, they're retaliating already, and France closed its borders. They've been issuing warrants, and yeah, it's going down in France right now.
Yeah, I mean, but my concern is. Hold on, I'm trying to fix the stream right now. Okay, I think we're back up. So the U.S. was instrumental in helping create ISIS, right? It was basically a subsection of Al Qaeda, which they created back in the 70s and 80s in Afghanistan. Then they basically renamed them, gave them a ton of training. I mean, it came out that they trained like 8 of these rebels, quote unquote rebels, that are basically all just ended up becoming ISIS, and they spent like $150 million training like 8 people.
That's crazy.
And then and then this whole Benghazi thing, which is okay, whatever it is, they ended up with a bunch of weapons, and now they're basically took those weapons and a lot of the weapons that were left behind from the Iraq War, and that's what's causing all this mayhem right now. So,
Yeah.
you have to wonder, was that just a bunch of really dumb mistakes? Or was that like a perfectly orchestrated series of events to create turmoil in that region because they knew it would eventually bleed into Europe?
I mean, why would Americans be sabotaging our own neighbors? I mean, our own allies. That's a bit of a stretch. I mean, Benghazi, drawing the connection between Benghazi as a way to give terrorists guns. Like, we don't need to have a Benghazi to give terrorists guns. We'll just give it to them. Like, that's
Oh,
been,
and we have done that too.
yeah. I mean,
I mean,
the
what I'm
American.
saying is that the people that are calling the shots, they're not looking out for the interest of the allies or even us as the American people. What I'm saying is that they're in cahoots for the globalists. They're working to create a one world situation. I mean, the interesting thing is we're seeing this whole idea of this conspiracy on all the new movies. I mean, have you seen that new James Bond movie yet?
Not yet. Should I? I want
I
to.
mean, Spectre is about that. It's just this international organization that is literally creating false flag terror attacks in different countries for their whole goal to create a one world government and a one world police force where they basically have surveillance on everyone.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it hits close to reality then.
Oh, it's totally close to reality. And then if you look at like the movies like Captain America, the Winter Soldier one, I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that one. Yeah, yeah.
Exact same premise, right? Hydra is Spectre, Spectra is Hydra, is the whatever is controlling this right now, this group of, Bilderbergs, or, I don't even know what they call themselves, but what we do know is there's a lot of money at the very top kind of pulling all these strings. I mean, what I also thought was interesting was a big factor in this terrorist attack is that no one in France is really allowed to have firearms. So they had to wait over an hour for police. They had multiple attackers that were able to actually, I think they killed over 140 people, and no one could fight back. So, I posted up something. I actually shared a post. We can pull it up right now. I shared a post on Facebook that says Paris is a gun-free zone. Thousands helpless as terrorists just basically roamed around shooting people. And how do you feel about gun control now? And then I had a few people like it, and then one of my friends, Mo, said, that's kind of in poor taste. But, I think it's definitely something to point out.
Yeah. The death toll, I have it right here, stopped at 129 dead, 352 wounded. Like that's a lot of people. I mean, and Paris hasn't declared.
That's almost 500 people dead
Yeah,
or wounded
yeah.
from some guns, right? It's not like, I think they had some grenades.
Yeah,
There's some explosives.
they did, they did. But I mean, if you wanna compare it to how many people in the United States die every year from guns, or how many people have died this year alone, I mean, America would still be winning in that sad respect. So, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
That's a whole nother hot
here's
topic
the
issue.
stats, right? Over 1,100 people just this year alone, since January 1st, have been killed by the police in the United States.
Yeah.
So,
So,
do you want to get up in arms over the French when 500 are killed, or the 1,100 that are killed by police? And those are the 1,100, that generally weren't in gun battles with the cops. Those were,
no,
people that were just in
unarmed
innocent
citizens.
situations. Yeah,
Yeah.
unarmed citizens. So, I think that's still a big problem too. It's a really big argument. Especially when you get into the Second Amendment in the US. I I don't own a gun personally. I think I'm eventually going to get one. But I think that, maybe if we all just had a firearm and had proper training, do you think we would be in a safer place?
I mean, how many? Let's say that same incident happened, here in the States, and it was at a concert hall in downtown LA. And who's gonna bring their gun out with them to go to a concert show? Nobody. You know what I mean? This isn't like, even in Nevada where you're allowed to have a concealed and carry, there's still a lot of places that won't let you. The closest it's gonna be is in your car. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But then again, if we did have a similar terrorist attack here in the United States, I think it would only have taken our, let's just say it was in LA, very popular city equivalent to Paris. I think it would have only taken our police half an hour to get down there with multiple SWAT teams,
That's still
helicopters.
30 minutes. You could shoot a lot of bullets in 30 minutes.
Yeah, you could shoot. I mean, if your goal was to just blow stuff up and kill a lot of people, yeah, you could. But I mean, a half hour versus an hour and 15 minutes, that's a big difference. Yeah,
Well, yeah. Obviously. And we don't know. There may have been a situation outside for, I don't have the details on that. But yeah, over an hour is ridiculous. Even 30 minutes to me is a lot. Even if they got it down to 10. 10 minutes, you could easily be dead. We're talking a matter of seconds. And I think that's really where this argument comes up. Obviously, the Second Amendment was not written for personal protection, right? It was a protection in case the government gets out of line. We can create a militia and fight back against them. That was
right.
the initial idea. But, I think there is something to be said. If let's say you had a dozen people that were carrying a firearm out of those 500, do you think that would have cut the number of casualties down?
Eh, I mean, maybe, maybe not. Hard to say. I mean, I feel like the terrorists would have been way better armed than just, the average guy out on a date with his girlfriend, or the average person. So, no, I don't think it's fair to say that just because you had a dozen out of the 120 something that happen to have guns, that would have been Now there would have just been more shooting back and forth before the police even got there. And then, who knows, the police might have been shooting the wrong people because now these citizens have guns and they don't know who's who. Bullets are flying, people are screaming, everything's going down so fast. I don't know. It wouldn't be the right time to just start waving around your gun if you had one. You might end up in the wrong side of the
Well,
crossfire.
I mean, I agree that there definitely could have mistaken them for the shooter, and either way, it could have been bad, but it could have been good too. So, um, I think let's drop this. We've kind of touched on it. It was a horrible thing that happened. I think none of us want that to happen. We don't want it to happen here. We don't want it to happen anywhere. And especially when people are saying, they do this in the name of God, which again, I think the majority of Muslims come out and say that they're not for this either. So I don't think it's a religion aspect of it. I think it really has to do with more political and because of what we've done in the Middle East. Which goes back to my point of this global government's kind of being the player going on under our noses for the last few years in secret discussions, and it's called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And to me, I think it's the most dangerous piece of legislature that has really come around politically, probably in our entire lifetime. And it's extremely concerning because it's basically putting the power not with the people, but it's putting the power with the corporations. And this document, if it was approved, obviously it has to get passed through Congress, although they can executive pass it and then use executive powers to get people to try to enforce it. But for it to really be legal, it would have to be passed by both the House and the Senate. But basically, this is giving the corporations powers to supersede nations, states, and cities and individuals. So, I'm pretty concerned about this. Have you heard about this?
No, no, this one's a little new to me. I guess I've missed out on this a little bit, but it sounds pretty scary.
Well, what we
Horrible.
did this week is we actually went through and did a good amount of research. So let's actually comb through what we discovered. Let's read the article that we wrote on this so everyone has a little clearer idea. We've even attached links so you can read the what's been released to the public. For months they wouldn't release anything, and even only a very select committee of senators were allowed to even preview this, and they could only preview it in private. They made them sign non-disclosure agreements. Senator Rand Paul, who's running for president right now, was one of the senators that was able to take a peek at it. And when he came out of the room, he said that they wouldn't let him take any notes, any pictures, and talk about the document. But he was extremely concerned with what it was entailing, and it's something that the American people we should all read. So now a lot of it's actually available online. I think New Zealand was the first country to actually publish the document. And here's the thing with the document. The document itself is like the longest document anyone has ever seen. It's longer than like the Bible. It's pretty much longer than anything. Here's an article by the Daily Caller that says that the TPP agreement is 3 times as long as the King James Bible. And then they also went in and said, oh, here's some other things that are long. So it's 3.8 times longer than the King James Bible. It's 5.7 times longer than the Obamacare Act. The entire Harry Potter series, it's still longer than that. 1.63 pages longer than that. Entire Lord of the Rings, 3.7 times longer. It's actually Game of Thrones. That one's kind of interesting. It's almost the same length if you take all the Game of Thrones books and put them together. Out of all the writings of William Shakespeare, it's 4.3 times longer. And it's 2.65 times longer than the entire dictionary.
Now, who's gonna read that?
Exactly. This is the funniest one of all. It's actually so long that if you put up all the paper, it would be higher than Vern Troyer, who was Mini-Me in Austin Powers. So, I mean, that's, first off, just being that long is ridiculous. Because basically, when we see documents of that size, what we're really seeing is they're trying to put in so much information because they're thinking that no one's actually going to comb through it and pick out all the things that are really going to go on. And that's why we're having a lot of issues with Obamacare. I think there's a big divide in Obamacare too. There's a lot of people that benefited, especially people that had pre-existing conditions. And there's a lot of people that are really getting the short end of the stick. Their monthly premiums have increased 3 times. So we saw what happened with Obamacare, and now that's pretty much Obamacare on steroids. So let's read through this article and see what's really going on. So the secretive and unpopular Trans-Pacific Partnership, also known as the TPP agreement, has been branded the biggest global threat to internet freedom. And for a good reason. The TPP is the result of almost a decade of secret negotiations, and its members nations represent 40% of the global economy and 800 million people. Now, China and Russia are not involved with the TPP agreement, but the TPP encompasses the economies of the United States, Canada, Australia, Singapore, Brunei, Chile, New Zealand, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, and Vietnam. The TPP could bring a range of new restrictions to the internet, allowing for big multinational corporations to crack down on the internet's users' freedom of speech and their right to privacy. So basically what it's saying is the TPP would basically give companies like Time Warner Cable the ability to shut off sites like Now Daily if they deem fit, and there would basically be no appeal process. And if you would notice that all these countries that are involved, United States, Canada, Australia, Singapore, Chile, every one of those countries has a central bank in the IMF system. So that's always the denominator between those countries. They're all working together because the bankers have gone in there and put in the central banking system. So the agreement signing has also been kept highly confidential, and the full agreement details are unlikely to be fully disclosed to the public for years to come. The supposed purpose of the TPP is to allow for greater trade between the member nations, strengthening economic ties and sustainable growth. That's what they're telling us. The public has been excluded from participating in any discussions on the matter, and several leaked provisions of the agreement addressing internet freedom has many people concerned. The majority of the details of the agreement that we do not know point towards the agreement restricting copyright laws and censoring internet freedom. We're talking about restricting copyright laws to the point where if you wrote, let's say Google, for example, their name in an email, they could somehow track and read that email and then come after you for copyright infringement for using that without a license.
Wow. It's incredible. It's really, really incredible. Sad.
I mean, I hope it doesn't pass the Congress. I don't think it will. But for them to spend so much time and effort on this thing, I mean, it really shows the balls that they have, because they really are, when people talk about this new world order or this one world government, you have to understand that the people at the very top are those same people that run most of the corporations. You think Sergey Brin and Mark Zuckerberg are the ones who own the majority of Google and Facebook. They don't. They each own very small shares. I believe they each own less than 5% of their respective companies. So then you have to look at the major shareholders, and then you realize that they're actually just subsidiaries of the same companies. And we've documented this. It's all on Now Daily, and you can go check it out. Just go on Now Daily, search money or elites or something like that. It'll pop up. But, very, very scary what they're trying to do. So continue reading this. Some other provisions is the broad ban on digital locks on devices, which could prevent disabled people from making important changes to their computers. Not quite sure what that's about. But But if passed, the deal will allow corporate tribunals to overrule Congress and violate the national sovereignty of the United States. So basically, they can do it. The corporations will be the ones running the show, not even the semi-elected republic. So if people don't think our system's working now, wait till you have absolutely no say.
I know. That's gonna be really crazy. The corporations running everything. I mean, yeah.
Definitely concerning. So, the main thing is they're spending a ton of time on this. They've even created their own website. You can go to it. It's linked down here on Now Daily. They created all these bullet points, but you can't read any of the actual text. They're basically just a few talking points that you want you to believe it's going to be a great thing for everyone. And, that's just not how everything's working. So we just need to wake up and look at what's going on right under our noses. And it's something that the major media isn't going to really talk about, because then you have to go back to who owns the major media.
Yeah.
They own them. So why would they tell them their plans when, why are they going to talk about that on Fox News when they could easily talk about Caitlyn Jenner or a terrorist attack or a million other things going on?
Yeah, and just to, be like, hey, look, something shiny over here. Let's not look at these important things. Let's look at Hollywood gossip, and let's pay attention to this other mindless stuff over here. Yeah, totally.
So you think, do you think this is going to be the future? Are we going to stop it? I think we're going two ways. We're either going like totalitarianism, collectivism would be the proper term, with only the elites, really these corporate powers with the huge money running everything, or we're going to wake up and it's going to be individual freedom, which is kind of how the world really works. If you look at any other animal, you don't see lions creating multinational corporations and one lion's like, oh, I'm better than you other lions, give me your lion meat.
No, I guess not. But I mean, we're also smarter than a lion, so.
Okay, I agree. But I'm just saying, in nature, what you notice is it's always from the ground up, not from the top down. There's not many leaders, but if you look at a beehive, for an example, right? A beehive becomes a working hive because of all the individual bees collectively working together, and they don't have a government force saying, oh, you bee A need to go do this, bee B need to do this. It's not how the beehive works.
Well, but the beehive has a queen, and everybody has to support and do whatever the queen wants and do what's best for the queen, and even if it means sacrificing themselves. Right.
True, but the only reason they have the queen is because the queen's the only one that can reproduce bees.
Yeah.
So we just need girls, Yeah, I think females pretty much run the world. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, that's a scientific fact. We can all agree on that.
Yes, but we don't need. There's not just like one queen. We don't need one queen. I don't even know why Britain still has a queen. What's the point?
Yeah, I feel like you can ask any British person and they would even agree with you. They can't even defend it anymore. I think they're tired of trying. They're pretty much like, yeah.
Think they're ever gonna get rid of the queen, or just like keep the queen around?
Well, I mean, she'll eventually pass, and the country will mourn. But I think they're wising up enough that they're probably gonna move on from that.
You don't think Prince Charles is gonna become king?
I mean, technically he will, but I mean, Parliament is the one that really makes all the decisions. The Queen and the King and the Prince are just sort of figureheads to sign off on stuff and make public announcements and cut ribbons at the end of the day. They can endorse something. They can say they're for something, but it doesn't mean Parliament's just going to like turn around and do it.
So then why do they even have them?
Because it's,
And why does Canada have them on their money?
Because they used to be a British colony.
Well, I understand that. We used to be a British colony.
Yeah, and we were like "F you, we're doing our own thing," but Canada didn't like revolt and dump tea in the in the bay. So
It should have.
they could have made iced tea before us.
Well, yeah, those would have been iced. Yeah, for sure. Real cold tea.
Yeah, we beat them to iced tea.
Yeah, and I think we dumped that tea in for like because of it was like a 6% tax on it,
Right?
and we pay what 9% when we buy lunch.
Yeah, we should start dumping everything.
But like that's the problem now. There's no like how would you create a big scene like that? That was like 24 guys going and dumping some tea, and it's become this whole big thing for like hundreds of years. You can't
Yeah,
get 24 guys and go do something like that these days.
and go dump some tea. I mean, no.
You got so much tea coming in here. You dump one ship of tea. There's like 5 ships coming in later that afternoon.
Yeah, true that. I mean, but why are we talking about tea?
We're not. We're talking about a big, revolt. What you could do to get people to wake up. The Tea Party is what did that.
Yeah, yeah.
So what would be the modern Tea Party?
Other than the Tea Party itself?
Yeah. I don't think.
I mean,
I think that
what,
PR move has already lost its fire.
what about the hacktivists like Anonymous? I mean, that's small cells of people going out there and attacking big government and big companies and releasing stuff to the public for public knowledge. I mean, that's a small group of people. It's not a lot of people, and they're attacking the big guys. I mean, that would be basically your equivalent. Are people going to remember them 200 years from now? I mean, probably not.
I mean, are they making as big an impact? Well, I bet you like Edward
Arguably.
Snowden. Yeah, he made probably a pretty big
Snowden.
impact.
Yeah, he would probably be talked about for a long time. But, that's just one guy, one whistleblower that, opened. But then again, he opened some people's eyes, and I would bet you the majority of people have no idea who he is or what exactly he did. They just know the name, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And then most people probably think he's a terrorist. They don't even realize like what he did. They just know that we're trying to get him.
Well, I think people need to educate themselves a little bit more.
That's
all you gotta do is go to nowdaily.com.
True that. Just read a book.
So, going back to the role of government, just because we had the another debate this week, now people are talking about this million student march that's been going on. I guess that happened. They had a few of them at a few different campuses. I think this woman was from, I want to say Yale, possibly. She had a pretty flimsy argument on what that whole march was about. So let's take a look at this video, and it was done by Fox News, and let's see what's going on with her argument on this.
To the details of what really they're asking for here, Kelly Mullen, Million Student March National Event Organizer. Kelly, good to have you. Keely, I'm sorry. Is it Keely or Kelly?
That's okay. It's Keely.
I apologize. So what do you
Totally
want
fine.
here? What do you want?
So the movement, the Million Student March, is a movement for a more equitable and fair system of education, as opposed to the really corporate model that we have right now. So the 3 core demands of the National Day of Action are free public college, a cancellation of student debt, and a $15 an hour minimum wage for people who work on the campus.
And how's that going to be paid?
Great question. So I'm not sure if you're talking on like a national level or at particular schools. I can sort of touch on both. At
Well,
my
if you wanted
university,
all that
Northeastern
stuff,
University,
someone asked to pick up the tab. Who would that be?
the 1% of people in society that are hoarding the wealth and really sort of causing a catastrophe that students are facing. I mean, we have a relationship right now where 1% of the population owns more wealth than the 99% combined.
All right, so if the
and that
1%,
relationship,
Kelly, if the 1% just had their taxes raised a few years ago back to almost 40%, Then to pay for the health care law, they had them raised another few percentage points. Then they had their deductions limited to raise another couple points, where depending on the state or locality, they're pushing over about 50% in taxes. How much higher do you think? How much more do you think they should pay?
I think enough until we have a system where not 1 in 2 American families are threatened with poverty.
So where do they go? Let's say if you tax them, they're smart folks, these people, these 1% hoarders, right? So if they leave here, then who's going to pay for all this stuff that you want?
If they leave
the country.
Oh, I mean, there's always going to be a 1% in the U.S. The U.S. is like the bastion of capitalism and its success, and I think
that... Do you
that,
think the 1% could pay for all of this?
Absolutely. 85 people in the world hold more wealth than half of the global population.
No, wait a minute.
I mean,
are we talking about 85 billionaires, or are you extending this to the 1%? Or whomever who earn a little bit north of $250,000. At what level, Keely, do you start saying you got to pay a hell of a lot more than you're paying now in taxes?
I mean, I think people earning, certainly people earning over $1 million a year should be contributing to the wellness of society.
If it's 50% now, let's say it's around 50% with taxes. We used to have a top rate of 90%. You think we should get back to that?
I mean, I think that eventually we will get back to that. I think eventually.
You're okay with that? Are some of your friends okay with that? Do some of them want to be successful themselves, and they'd be happy when they get to a level, maybe over 200,000, 250,000, they start paying 90% in taxes on that? They'll be happy with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that
Keely,
people,
come on. You're talking to me here. Your friends are going to be happy getting to a point in their career when they can look outside and say, finally, I'm able to pay 90% in taxes.
Obviously, you know, people in your position, you know, don't want to pay 90% in taxes.
I dare say, unless you're high as a kite, you wouldn't volunteer to pay 90%, right? I mean, unless you really did see a considerable bang for the buck and it was worth it, right? But a lot of the times that you realize it's not worth it, and given some of the track records we've seen with government, it doesn't always work, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But the reality is we have to look at the injustice of the system as it exists right now.
Then do you think maybe if everyone paid a little bit more for this, would you pay a little bit more for this, besides the rich, to pay for that it's worth it? That you think these are good goals?
People already are paying for this.
No, I asked it differently. I asked you, would you, Keely, and your friends, and your mom, and your dad, and your family, would they happily pay more to provide all of these benefits you just outlined?
Of course, and we already are.
No. You just said to pay for some of the things you wanted, the rich should pay significantly more than they're paying right now. Now you're telling me...
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Everyone's already paying.
Well, they're not. I mean, now you're saying for these added benefits that you want, and they're fine benefits, don't get me wrong. You think your friends, their parents, your family would be happy to pay a little bit more to provide these guarantees and benefits.
I come from an incredibly working class family, and my family is already on numerous forms of government assistance and is basically scraping by, you know, in order to get me through college. I live in a world and I see a system around me where there's a population that's doing nothing to contribute to the progression of society. Education is really the only way that we have innovation, that we have...
Keely, I'm sure you sound very smart. You know what's going on. You mentioned what's going on in the world. You're probably aware what's happening in Greece and these other countries that provided all these benefits and then some, many of which you outlined very nicely here for us today. And they're going broke, and they're out of money, and they don't know what to do. And their people are riding on the streets because they can't believe the money's gone and the benefits and the promises are gone.
Right.
What do you think?
I mean, there's a global catastrophe right now of complete defunding of social services and
because they ran out of money. You know what happened, Keely? They just ran out of money. Right?
I understand, but there is a 1% in Greece. There's a 1% in the United States. There's a 1%. There's a ruling class in absolutely every...
I don't doubt there is, Keely. I don't doubt there is, but obviously they've been trying to tap them to get money from, and they realize either they don't have the money or they hid from the money They're gone. They're gone.
Yeah.
And now these countries
so
are
then
going
those
bust.
people need to be accountable.
All right, fine, but they're smart and they're scurrying all over the globe. So now even if
they are, and that's a problem.
All right, but they've done studies on this, kid. I don't want to get boring here. But even if you were to take the 1% and take all of their money, tax it 100%, do you know that couldn't keep Medicare, just Medicare in this country going for 3 years? Did you know that?
If we're to a point where the rich is paying 100% on their taxes, then we're on the road to socialism, and we're going to have a completely different type of public infrastructure.
No, what I told you is that even if you took all the money from the rich who you say are getting away with murder, and you took it all away, it wouldn't support one entitlement in this country for 3 years.
I don't believe that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't. That sounds completely ludicrous to me.
Do you know that how much it will cost to mandate a $15 minimum wage across the country, to have everyone's student loan debt paid off, to pay for public college for everyone?
How much?
Do you have a rough idea on the cost of just the educational part, on the student loan part and the public college
yeah,
part?
absolutely. $1.3 trillion in student debt. That's just a beginning. And then billions and billions of dollars.
Do you know how much you get fully taxing the 1%? 100%.
I don't know. Is it close to the number, the $16 trillion that we spent to bail out the banks
hear what I'm saying,
in
because I just
2008?
want this to be a math reminder. $1 trillion, which would barely keep Medicare going for 3 years. That's one area. Even if we repositioned it to go into this area that you want, we don't have enough to do it. So you're going to have to find other means of getting money, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a starting point. I mean, I think that all of these things require really comprehensive programs.
No doubt. But do you
no doubt
feel,
about
I guess
it.
what
But
I'm
I
asking
think
you,
that, yes.
You're passionate about this, and I admire that passion and your involvement in this, but
Okay, so, some pretty interesting stuff. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think the media purposely picked somebody with a weak argument to put up and to represent, the millennials. And I don't know. I think she was handpicked because she had a weak argument, honestly. And
does anyone have a strong argument on it?
On free college? I think it's definitely something that, as people like you and me who went to school and paid out the nose and are going to be paying student debts off for the next 16 years of our lives, we would all love free college. We would all love to do it and not pay for it. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to pay the tuition. Somebody's got to keep the, facility up and running. Like, it can't just all be the state. And if it was, we'd be living in one of those societies where 50% of our income after we go into the workforce would be going just to state-run colleges, hospitals, facilities, infrastructure.
Well, actually, 50% of our income already is going to the state. When you factor in income tax, property tax, sales tax, tobacco tax, unemployment tax, we're pretty much already paying 50%, and we don't get those benefits.
No, well, that's not 100% fair, because you just said property tax and tobacco tax. Those are only subject to people who do those things.
Your rent
don't.
A portion of your rent is going to property tax, is it not?
Somebody else's, yeah, I suppose so.
So your rent is paying that property. Your rent would be less money if the property tax was less or non-existent.
True.
So
I'm saying as soon as you get your paycheck, 50% of it is already gone, because it's going towards things like different social services in general.
They're already taking 34%, for the average person, I think, out of their paycheck, when you count Social Security and income tax and everything else. Obviously people then have deductions, and they're getting a portion of that back if they're on that, direct deduction program.
Right.
It's still a huge amount compared to historically. But my point of view on this whole topic is everyone missed the whole question. The question isn't how do we pay for college? The question is, why did college get so expensive?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you didn't have to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt if you wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer 50 years ago. Sure, you had to pay some tuition, absolutely. But it was a few $100s compared to what's going on now.
Yeah. Yeah. So why is college so expensive now?
I mean, it comes back to our argument about inflation. You know, the main reason that college is so expensive is because the federal government subsidizes the student loans. And because they subsidize the student loans, it allows a borrower to take out more money than they normally would be able to take out. And what that allows the college to do is increase their rates because the students can take out more money to pay for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that's the biggest reason why we're seeing huge increases in tuition just in the last decade, let alone if you go back 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, the main reason is because the majority of students aren't paying cash for their tuition. A very, very small percentage of people are paying cash. And normally it's, I mean, obviously that would mostly be coming from their parents, because what 17-year-old has tens of thousands of dollars sitting around? Sure,
Right.
there's some brilliant ones out there that have figured that out, but that's very few and far in between.
Right.
So either the parents coughing up the bill of I think the average college is now like $32,000 a semester.
Wow.
You know, I know it's over 25. It's a lot of money. I mean, we lucked out when we went to UNLV. I think I had in-state tuition for 2 years, and I was paying like $5,000 a semester, maybe like $12,000 all year.
Yeah, that's the in-state tuition. I mean, that's the way to go if you can ever get it any school.
Right. I mean, to me, that was, that was a worthwhile investment, because if you look at that over time, you're looking at maybe $50,000 for the degree. Then when you start talking about some of these degrees where you have to go to graduate school, especially if you're becoming a doctor, there's lawyers. I have friends that are lawyers that owe over $200,000 in student loan debt.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to be paying it back for, next 15, 16 years. It's like a mortgage.
Yeah. It's exactly the same as the mortgage, and it's the exact same reason that the house prices have increased so much. Because it's all with the borrowed money. Most houses aren't being paid with cash. Most college tuitions aren't being paid with cash. They're being paid through mortgage and financing.
Yeah.
And it's that easy access to capital, although it's not easy for most people. You and me, if we walk into the bank, I just had a deal. Chase won't let someone take out a loan on a house for less than 25% down just because it's a duplex, which is actually a better investment than a single family. So, the banks are very stringent on who they give this money out to, but yet they're giving out so much of it through fractional reserve banking that it's inflating all the prices. Now, granted, that doesn't even include the cost of the material goods going up, the cost of paper, the cost of gas, and then with the cost of food and housing, that increases the wages that the professors need just to live on. So all those things continue to increase. So people look at it on a little level and be like, oh, well, tuition's so expensive because the professors are expensive and the classrooms are expensive and the electric bill is expensive and this is expensive. Well, it's all gone up through inflation, through really the currency printing of the Federal Reserve, which is what's called the Cantillon effect. And I have not heard of the technical term for this until earlier this week. It was actually in the presidential debates, which I didn't watch much of. I watched maybe 20 or 30 minutes of it with the Republicans. I watched the Dems one too, but I mean, there's pretty much Tweedledum and Tweedledee up there right now. So, but Rand Paul actually mentioned this is exactly what's happening, the Cantillon effect. Have you heard of the Cantillon effect before?
We were talking briefly about...
So basically, about money and prices, most people say, well, imagine the stock of money. Basically, imagine that you have a stack of money and it magically doubles overnight. every single piece of currency creates a copy of itself. If you had $30 in your wallet and went to bed, you wake up with $60. Now, after everyone settles down into the new equilibrium, you see the community isn't richer, all the prices have just doubled, right? That's general inflation. If someone gave you twice as much money and they gave twice as much money to everyone, well, everyone's just going to have twice as much money, so now there's just more supply and an equal amount of demand. Prices will just raise to counteract it. But it's not actually how it works like that. So actually, when students start realizing, when you point out that all prices won't just magically double like that, they actually come down in like a trickle effect. So commodity prices rise very quickly, whereas labor contracts are more rigid. If an old widow is on Social Security, she's clearly going to lose out, whereas a magician can just jack up his rate of performance very quickly. So basically it says that, sure, even if there was a huge flood of money like that, overnight, everyone gets a check for $1 million. Well, it wouldn't all equal out on average because things are locked at different prices and certain things aren't, right? If you have a year lease, that year lease is going to be locked in as a certain price. You can't change that for maybe 10 or 9 months. If you have a mortgage, that mortgage will be locked in at a certain price. Whereas things such as oil and gold and these other commodities fluctuate in price by the second. So those will be the very first things affected by inflation. While then the rest of it starts trickling down into the prices of housing. So that's really what the Cantillon effect is about. Basically it's saying that when new money is created, when the printed presses are going at the Fed, that money is not equally distributed, right? You are not getting a check from the Federal Reserve in the mail. I've never gotten one. Charles, have you gotten a check from the Fed?
You're not talking about a tax return, I take it.
No. I'm talking about newly printed money into your pocket.
No, not necessarily, no.
Yeah, so it doesn't happen like that. So what a really good analogy is Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. He actually has a little graphic video where he says that there's kind of two edges of the coin in our economy. And the Fed's kind of in the middle of it. And on one edge, you have the people in the economy that are doing real well because they get to borrow free money from the Fed at 0% interest. Right? They have a direct relation. They can call them up and say, hey, Fed, can you please give me some money? Yeah, I'm running low, so we're going to need $500 billion. And then the Fed's like, oh, yeah, sure. We'll just type that in and send it over to you, Chase or Wells Fargo or Bank of America. Those major banks are really the beneficiaries, or major foreign investment banks as well. So that's the Cantillon effect. That money is being created. It's being created out of nothing, put into the system, but it's going to the banks first. So they're the big beneficiaries, and then we get screwed out of it because it trickles down and inflates all the prices. It inflates the prices of the houses. It inflates the prices of your tuition. It inflates the prices of your oranges.
Yeah, man. And we all know that banks lend out money. You have $10,000 in your savings account, and the bank knows you're not just going to come in overnight and snatch it all away. So they're lending out, half of it, 50, 60%, 70% to other people through other loans, then collecting an interest back on it. This is what banks do. This is how banks make money. Aside from collecting fees and aside from different stuff like that, they're collecting money by lending out money and receiving interest on it. And they've basically created money out of nothing as well. The banks are already creating money out of nothing. Then the feds are giving them more money to create more money out of nothing.
Right. Well, that's actually only half correct. Because you're missing a key aspect, something that the banks have created called fractional reserve lending. So you're right, the bank takes your $100 and can lend out your $100, but they don't just lend out your $100. They're actually to lend out your money 9-to-1, meaning they only need to have 10% in actual reserves. So if they have $100 of your money in their bank, they can actually lend out $900 and create all that extra money out of thin air just by typing numbers in the computer. So not only are they getting that free money from the Fed, they're then able to multiply that by 9 times.
Yeah.
So it's compounding way worse than we even think. So this goes back to the argument the girl made, right? Now because prices are so much higher, housing's so much higher, everything's so inflated, and we should really dive into more details and showing some actual charts and stats on the inflation of the commodities. But, everything's so inflated that she's saying, hey, we need $15 an hour just to make a living wage. And I think $15 full-time breaks out to like just over $32,000 a year or so, give or take. Well, we know what's going to happen. Most places can't sustain that because their margins are shrinking, because their cost for electricity is getting higher, their cost for food's getting higher, their cost for their everything's insurance, all that's going up. So they can't afford it. It's either going to drive them out of business or they're going to do like this, like what McDonald's has been doing. Here's the new McDonald's that they're going to launch. It's basically going to be, automatic computers as your server. They're just going to get rid of them. Anyone who is at a skillless job, they're just going to replace them with a touchscreen. That's it. So the $15 an hour is actually going to get rid of the $7 an hour jobs.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy, man. That's insane. I mean, as soon as they figure out how to make a robot cook the burger too, they'll have that back there cooking the food.
Actually, I think the robot already does. It's like a whole microwave system. All the guy does is put the bun and the burger and the ketchup together.
So all you need is a general manager just to, take it out of one thing and put it into a box and hand it to people?
If that, they could probably figure out how to package it and slide it down a little thing.
Yeah.
But,
just like a vending machine.
Yeah, like a vending machine. We're seeing that. There's a new restaurant opening in LA called Itza. It's all automated. No one works there. You cannot talk to anyone. You walk in there and you can get a quinoa bowl, touchscreen. They literally pop out. Someone places a little bowl in like a little cubby and you go and reach it and eat it. That's the future. Thanks to $15 an hour minimum wage.
I guess so. That's a sad future, man. Especially for me, living and working in the hospitality industry. I'm not ready to give up my job to a machine.
Well, I think they've already come out with machine bartenders that will mix drinks.
That's
sad. But I don't think people are ready for it yet. I think still who controls the market is the consumer, you and me, the dollar.
Right.
Where we want to spend our money. So if you don't like that McDonald's setup, just don't go shop at McDonald's.
Right.
I'm going to leave you guys to screw around. I think that's been our Now Daily tonight. And, a lot's going on this week. We'll keep everyone updated on what happens this week. Check out nowdaily.com. Comment below on your thoughts on what's going on. Subscribe, share this. We're trying to counteract the major media and really get reporting out, but we need your help. So subscribe, share, go to Now Daily, subscribe to the email list, and we'll see you later. We're out.
Thanks for listening. This has been Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Want more? Visit the website nowdaily.com/show.